Good morning and welcome to today's edition of Ask Me Anything, courtesy of the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce and EDC and SCORE Colorado Springs. I'm Brian Neth. I'll be your moderator today. I'm from SCORE Colorado Springs, which provides free mentoring throughout Southern Colorado. Our subject is how to own a successful franchise. And our esteemed panel is ready to answer any of your questions. Let them introduce themselves. Cindy, could you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Cindy Rayfield. I am a franchise broker and consultant at a company called Matchmakers. What we do is we help people find franchises through a process of elimination, finding out what their personality and their strengths are, what they have to invest and what they want to invest. And I go out and I help them find the right franchise that's going to fit them and do the research as they move through the process. In addition, I'm also a franchisee myself. I own 2 kids' hair salons in the Denver metropolitan area. So I can speak from a franchise broker perspective as well as a franchisee perspective.
Very good. Thank you, Cindy. We also have Joseph Locke with us. Joseph?
Thanks, Brian. My name's Joseph Locke. I own a Edward Jones branch here. So a relatively small franchise with a name most people will recognize. My background was a whole career with the U.S. Air Force, and just kind of looking when I was transitioning out to leap into business without knowing really what business was about. So the franchise model really worked out well for me to kind of visualize all the structures were there, and have enjoyed it so far.
Very good. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Jackie Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Jackie Gonzalez, and I am a commercial lender with ABC Bank here in Colorado Springs. I specialize in SBA lending, which is a product that banks use mostly for financing startups. So I am able to help answer questions regarding financing needs and how to get financing for your startup franchise.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. So we have a number of questions that have come in, and the first one is, who is the ideal person for owning a franchise? Anybody can answer, or all.
Well, I can start since I help find those people. I think the ideal person to buy a franchise is somebody who, first of all, they kind of have to not be afraid of this process. They have to be okay feeling uncomfortable. Because I don't know if I speak for all of you guys, but man, when you're an entrepreneur, things are going to get uncomfortable. But being uncomfortable is the currency that we pay for success. And that pretty much goes for anything. But you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. You have to be able to make decisions, and you have to be able to make decisions very quickly. And you have to be okay with analyzing yourself and being in emotional control. So that's kind of like the emotional side of it. Also, you have to be well capitalized. And I think, Jackie can probably speak to that. What does that look like to be well capitalized? You have to be able to afford a business, and you have to be able to have that financial hang time and live in that discomfort to get you to where you start to see the money coming back into you. So I'll let other people answer that as well.
Yes, Cindy, I'd say from my side, as I was looking at it, I knew that I wanted to have the flexibility that come with being my own business owner. I knew that I had the drive and the motivation to get going. What I didn't have was the expertise on what HR looks like, and I didn't have a perfect picture of, hey, here's this other niche that I could go to. So for me, the franchise mode, having something where the business model already existed, there was already a name, there was an advertising structure, was really appealing to me, because then I could take my drive and motivation into a system that was already running, instead of having to independently invent all those things as I was going through that startup period. Exactly what you're talking about of all those challenges that just come with starting up.
That's good. Let's see, that leads right back into another question, actually, is training. how do you learn to run a franchise? What happens? What do you get from your franchisor? Cindy?
Well, I'll start because I'm also a franchisee and I own hair salons, but I don't cut hair. I mean, that's as a business owner or as a franchise owner, a lot of times the franchise is looking for somebody who can actually manage a business from the 30,000 foot level and not the 10,000 foot level. So the training that I got as an owner is quite different from the people that I need to actually be in the salon working. So the franchisor is not going to train me on how to cut hair. That's just not what they do. They're training me on being an owner and operating the business from that 30,000 foot view. So there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who don't have any special education or special training. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to enroll in, some prestigious entrepreneurship program at the university. Being an entrepreneur and being a franchise owner sometimes is about learning. It's that on-the-job training. I mean, you learn to go in and just get stuff done. You do activities that lead toward the end result. But the nice thing about being part of a franchise is you can actually lean on the franchise to give you what you need to be able to see that success.
I see. Okay. How about you, Joseph? How was your training?
Yeah, and I guess I didn't do a whole lot of research beforehand, but I've been pretty pleasantly surprised so far in that they've been very good at, here's what you need to know. I'm personally very much a details kind of a person. So I love to dig in and really get all the details, and they were very good at kind of accommodating me, but at the same time giving me what I needed when I needed it. And then, as I got through the initial phase of month one, then it was, okay, here's the next thing you need to know. And here's the next door to walk through. Let's give you some classes. Let's pull you in, whether that was back to our headquarters or virtually. And then 3 months later, they would say, hey, and this has been on your mind for a little while. Let's talk about this next piece. And so it was really great there, as my spidey senses started to tingle of, oh crap, I don't know something, then they were already ready to roll in with that bit of information. So it really helped me make that transition from a world where business wasn't my forte into, taking all the things that were my forte and then blending that into a business model. So it's been invaluable for me.
Excellent. It's kind of
Brian,
like they know that you don't know.
Exactly. Brian, could I add something to this also? There's a lot of franchises out there that people aren't even aware of. And there's this misconception that you need to have some sort of special skill to start a franchise. But the reality is, if you don't know about it, it doesn't mean that it's not a good franchise, and it doesn't mean that you aren't a good fit for it. You may have all the personality traits to run a commercial cleaning business, but a lot of people are like, wow, I don't want to clean toilets, but that's not what you're doing as the franchise owner. So, as Joseph said, the franchisors actually, they know what they're looking for in an owner and what the owner is supposed to know and what the owner is not supposed to know. So I always tell people to keep an open mind with what franchises they're looking at specifically, because there may be something that's a really good fit for you emotionally, personally, schedule-wise, family-wise, that you would have never thought of for yourself because you think you don't have skills in that. So I always tell people to have an open mind to the opportunities. There's a lot out there that people just don't know about, and they don't want to be limited by having information necessarily.
How do you identify that something would fit you? I mean, there's so many franchises out there. How do you actually identify one, or two or three?
Well, and I'm going to talk. Poor Jackie. I mean, she's there. She's got like all the information on money, but money is a big driver in this. So as a franchise broker, for me, when I'm looking at somebody, and I never want to get down to the path, well, it's all about the money, but it's a huge factor in what you're able to buy and what you're able to get into. Because if you're looking for something, I don't know, $1 million concept and you can't qualify for it, then you shouldn't be looking at it. But that doesn't stop people from trying to look at it. But the franchisor is going to turn you away. So they want to make sure you're qualified. So the money's a huge factor in that. It's probably up there, either number one or number two. But if you're working with a broker, the broker actually has, all brokers that I know of, there's people like me, they're all over. They actually have a personality profile that you take. A lot of them do. Sort of like a psychological analysis that helps to understand what your fits are. But that money, you know, Jackie, you can probably speak to that.
Yeah, Jackie, what's your perspective on this?
Well, you know, banks or lenders typically like franchises because they do offer training. So, you know, going back to that is a really important part. And the franchises that I've worked with, a lot of times, it seems like the majority of the time, they will go out to the company and maybe stay out there for 2 or 3 weeks and kind of learn, like Cindy said, you know, step by step how to run the franchise. And then a lot of the franchises will also come out and help the owners when they open. So they'll offer kind of on-site training as well. So those are some different things that I've seen. But yeah, I agree. Money is a very important thing. A lender wants to make sure that not only do you have enough money to put down on a what we call a project, which typically with SBA, SBA requires 10%. However, most banks are not going to do a loan with just 10%. Most want at least 20%. And depending on the industry, if it's a riskier industry such as restaurants, a bank or a lender may require more money in. So, but not only are they looking for that, they're also looking at how much money are you going to have left over once you open your doors, because it's not like you open your doors and you're making money on day one. And that's something that, you know, people have to be prepared for. So we want to make sure that you have enough money sitting in the bank to allow you to get through that ramp up time, and, you know, make sure that you're able to pay your rent and pay your employees and all those things. So, you know, the finance part of it is a big thing. You know, those are really the two big factors. It's how much money can you put down, and how much working capital will you have after you put those funds down.
Okay. As long as we're talking about money, how does a franchisee pay the franchisor? I mean, is it a fixed fee? Is it a percentage? How does that go?
I can answer that. Usually, and for those who aren't familiar with franchising, in the franchise world, the franchisor has the idea, they have the system, and then you're able to buy into the system and represent that company and the branding and everything that comes with it. But in exchange for that, for the support that you get from the franchisor, the ongoing support, the ongoing training, the systems that they put into place for you, you're paying back a percentage back to the franchisor. So you certainly should be getting something for that. And that percentage varies depending on the franchise. In my Cookie Cutters Haircuts for Kids salon, I have a 6% royalty. So 6% of my gross revenue goes back to the franchisor, and it supports our IT systems, the people in the corporate office. It helps to pay their salary so that they can be there to answer my questions. It pays for new product launches that we're doing. It pays for things, and that's what royalties should pay for. There's other franchise concepts that are flat fee based. So you have, I don't know, it just depends on the franchise, anywhere from $500 a month, and it may increase over time as your business grows. Could be $1,200 a month. It could be a certain amount per quarter, a certain amount per year. But that money is basically pooled with other franchisees to help support the franchise and its operations, the power of the franchise. So you're all chipping in to help to keep this system going.
You know, I would think with the current economy, you'd prefer the percentage gross sales. Does that make sense?
It did for me. I'm telling you, during pandemic, I didn't pay any royalties in April and for the last half of March, because there was no money coming in during the shutdown, because we had to close our salon for 6 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean that the franchisor who has the flat fee isn't going to be considerate of that, because I'm sure that there are many that were. This was unprecedented. Who would have known?
Right.
Cindy, can you also talk about the upfront franchise fee?
Yeah. Part of buying into a franchise is you're paying a franchise license fee. So you're using somebody else's idea, so you're going to be paying a franchise license fee, and that license fee is going to be basically for the first one. And if you buy multiple locations, a lot of people start out buying the rights to the entire state of Colorado or whatever. And that's a bigger franchise fee up front. But you are buying a license fee to be able to do business in that name. That franchise fee can range anywhere from $30,000 to, depending on how many licenses you buy, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that franchise fee is just a portion of what you have to pay, because you still have to do build out. But like for a single location of maybe a hair salon, it might be $30,000. And then generally, the more you buy, you get everything else at a discount beyond that. So there's a lot of people that would take advantage of that and buy their franchises, all their licenses up front, even though they're only going to be opening one at a time.
Interesting. So they could be a huge capital outlay, actually.
Well, huge is relative.
Well, yeah.
It depends on, look, you're buying a system. Like it just depends on people's philosophy. You can do a startup business and you can bootstrap it. But, then you don't have all the systems. You're throwing things against the wall. So I think, huge outlay is a relative term depending on how well capitalized people are.
That's true. That's very true.
Hey, Brian, you mind if I ask a question?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just kind of sitting here, kind of outside guy looking in, and I didn't have a Cindy when I started the process. So I guess my question is, there's always risk and reward with business. And so where's the risk for the franchisor? Like, do you see different kind of modes between them on, sometimes they're in and kind of have risk as well? Or is it just all the franchisee that kind of, hey, I'm buying the system and it's up to me totally. And I'm going to get some help, but it's all on me? Or do you see some franchises that are different and they kind of share that a little bit more?
There's a huge risk to the franchisor. People don't always see it that way. They're like, well, you're taking my money. But the reality is the franchisor has a big risk up front, bringing on a new franchisee. The newer a franchisee, the more time it takes from the franchisor's perspective and getting them through that uncomfortable phase to get them comfortable, okay? They're also not paying royalties. You're starting out at zero. So they're taking a huge risk on, yes, they've got that upfront franchise fee, but that barely covers the expense to get them through training, cover marketing, because they do have to spend marketing. They have to spend money up front to find people out there to buy the franchise. And part of that is the broker fee. So yes, there are fees that the franchisor has to pay. If they get the wrong person in, it's a very big risk to them. It's a very big risk. They don't want to have the wrong person in. They don't want to have a failure in their FDD. They don't want to have to report that.
Interesting. Is there a fairly stringent vetting process on their part?
Absolutely. And it's a 3 to 4 month vetting process. So it's like a mutual. Not only is the potential franchisee vetting the franchisor is vetting the franchisee. And I've seen them turn down. I've seen many people turn down because it just didn't quite meet what the franchisor was looking for. They don't want a failure on their books.
Interesting. Do they ever fire a franchisee?
Yes.
Oh.
Absolutely. They will.
Interesting.
They don't want a bad franchisee in their system. They don't want the rogue. They don't want the rogue, and every franchise has them, but they don't want that rogue, because they're going to be the ones, and we've all been there in the workplace. You got the rogue employee stirring up trouble. They don't want that.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So as a franchisee, how do you market your services?
Joseph, would you take this one, because I got to go plug in my computer.
Yeah,
I got to find a way to do that. I'm outside here, but I'm going to go plug in, so you guys fight with me.
Got it. And I can't speak for other organizations, but it's on one hand, it's really nice because a lot of the things that start with marketing are already put in place, so whether it's the mug that exists and the logo, if I want to build a Facebook page, there's a process for me to do that, and it's super easy. So that becomes very standardized. Now, on the other side, when I want to try something a little bit unique or specific to Colorado Springs, then it becomes a little bit more, well, but this is our name and we didn't approve that, so because they have a lot of skin in the game as well. So that there's yin and yang to all of it, and that it's nice, and you see the names out there, whether it's Chick-fil-A or, some of the auto shops around and those kinds of things. That it's great to have those things built in, but then this is how we do it, that kind of restrains some of your activity at the same time. So I've seen some good and some challenges, especially as new technology, as COVID comes on. There's at least on my side, maybe some things that I wasn't able to take advantage of because the bigger organization wasn't ready for me to go do that as well.
Boy, Cindy, your background has really changed. Wish I had that as my backyard.
I'm by the bay now.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you want me to input on that?
Yes,
repeat
please.
that question.
It was about marketing your business, your services.
So I market, because I'm a hair salon, and I market to kids. I mean, this kind of goes to show that every franchise may have a different way of doing marketing, but I market to families. And so a lot of my marketing is done on social media. As young moms are. I target young moms between the ages of 25 and 45. So, I use Facebook, but I also use email marketing and I use text marketing. And those are all set up through the franchise.
Interesting. That's very good. Actually, I know a bit of your story, Cindy, how you had to, as they say, pivot during this pandemic. Could you discuss that a little bit? I think people would find it very interesting.
Well, and I know that I'm not alone. I know restaurants are going through this right now. In fact, and people in California who absolutely, many of them are not even back open yet. So when you have a retail storefront service business and a pandemic hits, you got to pivot. You got to figure out different things to do. And one of the things that I had to do was figure out how I can make money during the pandemic time, even though our doors were closed. I mean, the reality is we have to be there cutting hair. And if we're not there to cut hair, we don't make money. So what can I do to make money, knowing that eventually I'll be open back up again to cut hair? But in the meantime, how can I get through? So the franchise, with the help of the franchise, we tried something different. We did not have an online presence. We didn't sell anything online. You had to walk in the door and buy something and walk out with it. But we actually got shopping carts. Many of us chose to be the guinea pigs on that. And I sold gift cards. And I actually had so many people who were valued customers who were like, I'll buy your gift card. So we had a lot of people buying gift cards from us. And we actually did quite well during March, because I also sold my product online. I had to figure out how to do a shopping cart. I've never done that before, and how to deliver it, and how to do curbside pickup when people came by. And I had just bought a lot of product because we were going into spring break, and at spring break, a lot of people are buying products for their kids. They're getting ready to go on vacation. And so I had to figure out how I was going to move this product that I just stocked on my shelves. And we did that through shopping cart. And now that it's in, I'm always going to have my shopping cart, because it was kind of a pain to get started and set up, but it was so successful for me. And I was really grateful for that. But that's how we had to pivot. That's one of the things that we did. I know other restaurants had to pivot because they had to figure out, if they didn't do online delivery or pickup before, guess what? They're doing it now. And they had to learn how to be friendly with Uber Eats and all of these other places. And I mean, it's fees that they had to pay, but they had to learn how to survive.
Interesting. Okay. So let's say that you've been in business, you've had your franchise for 20 years, 30 years, you're about ready to ride off into the sunset. How do you exit the business? And does your sponsor, your franchisor, do they help you?
Joseph, do you want to answer that one? You probably have an exit strategy, I'm guessing.
Well, you know, I have gray hair, but I haven't been sitting in the seat quite that long. But yes, they do have a very specific method, and it starts just right where you're at, Cindy, with that screening process of who's even eligible, and then once that happens, so when I came in, I was kind of a recipient of that kind of transition process, and so basically I worked with the previous advisor for 2 years, meeting with the clients, and getting introduced to them, and then transitioning through, so that became a seamless process for the client, rather than just having a new face that they didn't know and didn't trust. And that's one thing that I really like about our model, is everything revolves around personal connection and really getting to know and understand our clients, and that is reinforced with that transition process as well. So I don't think it worked exactly the way my predecessor wanted it to, because of some of those policies, and that again is part of that model on, even though you're an independent business owner, there's also some rules and baggage that comes along with the franchise process as well. But it worked out very well for me. And then, you know, thinking forward as I build those personal connections, it's kind of a reinsurance for me on these people that I know and love and I'm taking care of, being able to make sure that eventually, when either less hair or more gray hair shows up, you know, however that works itself out, then they'll have a seamless transition as well, because of that structure that's there.
Well, let's see.
And
We have
I'll add something to that as well.
Oh, please.
And Cindy can probably talk a little bit more about this, but I have helped several people purchase a second franchise. So maybe they own, you know, a hair salon, and they know of another franchisee in the market that is looking to get out, retire, sell, whatever. And so they will work, because they already own a franchise. I think it's a lot easier for them to qualify, and it's a lot of times it'll make sense. So I have worked with people that, you know, that are currently in the franchise system and are looking to expand. And one way they can do that is by buying out other franchisees as they are ready to retire. And I think that process is probably a little bit easier because you're already vetted, you have a history with the franchise, and they know, you know, your background and your skills.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
So see, we have a question that came in, two-part question. Let's see, how long does it take before an average franchise breaks even?
I can respond to that one.
Okay.
And the answer is going to be very nebulous. It depends. Every franchise has a different process. There are no guarantees. If you're looking for a guarantee in something written in stone, you're not going to find it in any business, whether it's a startup, a franchise, buying somebody else's business. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. We don't know what you're going to do. And this is another risk. Again, the franchisor can control a lot of things. They can control everything about their system, but what they can't control is the motivation of the franchisee. So if you decide to curl up in the fetal position and not get out of bed because you're scared, that's nobody's problem. That's nobody's issue but yours. And you're not going to grow your business that way. So it depends. It depends on how quick you are. It depends on if you have a semi-absentee business versus an owner-operator business. Semi-absentee being hair care like mine. I don't cut hair, so I'm not paying myself a salary right now. And I've been doing this for 3 years, but I've chosen to do that. I've selected to do that. I've selected to, because I've got 3 locations I'm growing out. I've got 2 locations operating right now. I've got a 3rd one going. I've elected not to take an income from my business because I'm going to put it all into the franchise. There's a lot of people that think that way, that they won't take a return on investment for a long time. And even at that, you know, as Jackie said, like in the very beginning, you're not making money. You're not making money on day one. And from my experience in doing this 12 years, what I have seen is magic happens in year 2. If you can't get through year 1, it's a problem. It's a problem. You got to have that financial hang time, that emotional hang time, because both of those things are going to affect your return on investment. And again, that doesn't matter if it's a franchise or a startup or anything else. The magic happens in year 2, people. That's just the quality of it.
Yeah. And the second part of the question was, how long does it take to recover your initial investment? And I would think the answer would be basically the same.
Absolutely. Depends on how fast you want to grow. Depends on how fast you want to put money back into the business. Depends on how fast, what your motivations are. Again, if you're planning to grow out 3, you may not be taking an income for a while. You may be leveraging the first store to help pay for the second store, and the second store to pay for the third store. So it just depends on what you want to do, what your goals are.
Okay.
And one of the things that you asked at the very beginning were traits that you should have. And one of those is you have to be willing to take a risk, because you're not going to open up day one and start making money. So you have to be willing to take a risk, because that's what owning a business is, whether it's a franchise or anything else. And with the people that I've worked with, like Cindy said, usually year 1 is pretty tough. And if you can get through year 1, usually, year 2, good things start to happen. But you cannot go into the business expecting that, in 6 months you're going to break even, and in a year you're going to get your initial investment back. It takes years. It's not, 6 months. It's not a year. It's years. So you have to be prepared for that.
Listen, if you want to start making your 6-figure salary in 3 to 6 months, you should just go get a job. Because listen, at least you're getting some security that you're getting a paycheck. But even at that, people, we all know jobs don't necessarily last. I've talked with people that have come into my salon that were transferred to Colorado before pandemic, and they didn't even start their job. They got laid off before they even started. Life is a risk, folks. It just is.
It is. It just is, right?
Yeah.
And part of that risk, here's a new question. And this actually has a lot to do with risk, right? What happens if you are, What happens when you're faced with a new competitive situation? For instance, In-N-Out is coming to Colorado Springs. What if you have a hamburger restaurant and now you have In-N-Out as a neighbor? Does the franchisor help you?
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
There is more business there's business for everyone. You just have to find your niche, and you have to go back. You may need to go back to the franchisor, get clear on your why. And this goes back to starting any business. Get clear on your why. What makes you different? What makes you special? I have a lot of people that are thinking, and I've had people tell me this, kids hair care, that's just too niche. It's too narrow. Heck no, there's lots of kids that need haircuts. That sets me apart. I am totally set apart from the great clips, the supercuts that do family haircuts, because I do kids cuts. And I target, it allows you to target specifically to the people that are going to come in. You got to figure out who that is. Everybody needs to eat. This is what makes food difficult, is everybody needs to eat. And it might be a little bit hard to find those hamburger people specifically, but competition is what makes the world go round. If there's not a market for it, there isn't a franchise that's going to go into the market. If they don't think they can make it in the market, if there's not already a competitor there, they're not going in. It's a different way to look at competition. Competition.
Well, and I would say that would be one of the advantages, though. If I had a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's, it would be really easy to go and say, hey, In-N-Out Burger just showed up. What's the playbook look like? And there already happened in LA, it happened in Francisco and Denver and in other places. So that, and if they don't have it, they can put you in contact with somebody else in the franchise who already faced that and can give you, hey, here, it ended up not being a big deal. Like Cindy was saying, there's enough for everybody. Or, hey, this is what I had to do, and it took me 6 months to get back to where I was, or whatever. So you're prepared for it while the building's getting built.
Okay. So we have another question. It says, is there a preference for how funds are gathered for the upfront financing? Would it be private investors, SBA, and so on and so forth?
So that's kind of a two-part question. If you have enough cash to pay for a franchise, then obviously you're not going to have to get financing. And as far as the franchise is concerned, I don't think they care. And maybe I'm wrong, Cindy can answer that, but I don't know that they care so much where you're getting the funding. If you are looking for a loan with a lender, again, typically a lender is going to utilize SBA, which is Small Business Administration. Those loans are backed by the government, so the government provides a guarantee anywhere from 50% to 90% of the loan amount. So if the borrower defaults, the bank has a pretty good position where they feel like they're not going to lose a bunch of money. So because of the risk of startups, most lenders will only do a startup using SBA financing. With that, again, you typically have to put down 20% with most lenders of the project cost. So project costs include everything it takes to open your doors. It can include the franchise fee, any build outs, any equipment you have to buy. So everything that it's going to take to get you to open your doors, you have to come up with 20% of that. That can be through investors. However, if you're going to have investors that come in as owners, you need to be aware that anybody that has a 20% or more ownership interest does have to personally guarantee any loans. You can also use home equity, or you can get another loan. However, one of the rules with SBA is if you do borrow your down payment funds, you have to have another source of income to be able to make that payment. So for instance, if you have a spouse that works and their income can support that payment on that loan, then that will work. However, if you don't have any other source of income, you cannot borrow funds for your down payment. So those are some of the rules regarding financing.
Okay.
If I could jump in here, Brian, really quick too, is like
Sure.
one thing that people don't think about. Everybody's like, well, gosh, if we pool our money together, then we can buy something bigger. What nobody ever thinks about is, okay, now you got to split that money apart. And it doesn't seem like so much then when you're splitting with partners or investors. And if you guys watch Shark Tank, listen, those people own you. So you start bringing in investors and you have this business that you just want to run. If you're bringing investors, VC, angel investors, partners, it sounds really great. It sounds really awesome. It sounds like you got people bringing in money, helping you out. But don't be under the impression that then you get to make decisions, because you don't. Because somebody else has brought money to the table, they get decisions too. And it's important to the franchisors how you finance this. This is why they ask for your financials up front. They want to make sure that you're qualified, so that if you go to Jackie, that they're not spending their time talking with you for these 3 to 4 months through this vetting process, and then come to find out that you can't qualify for a loan. So they're going to want you to have a conversation with Jackie early on to make sure you know what you can qualify for. Jackie's going to take a look at your net worth. She's going to take a look at money you have on hand, cash on hand. The franchisor wants to know that up front too, so that they can pre-qualify you. It's pretty important.
Interesting. Okay. We have another question here. It says, as someone interested in exploring options, how would one begin? Any advice for keeping a current steady job while potentially starting a franchise, moonlighting?
So I would say, like Cindy said, visit with your bank as soon in the process as you can, as early in the process as you can. They can walk through, what you might be able to qualify and help you understand what that looks like. And that can also help you maybe pick a franchise. Like Cindy said, maybe you think you want $1 million franchise, but you can't qualify for that. So, you're going to have to look in the $300,000 range. So that also gives you an idea of what you can qualify for. As far as keeping a steady job, of course, lenders like that because you still have an income stream coming in. So that usually is a plus. However, we can also look at it as a negative depending on the type of business. There are businesses where you have to be there every day, and like Cindy said, she doesn't cut hair, so it's not as big of a deal for her to be there day in and day out. However, if it's something where you have to be there, then it's going to be, a negative if you keep your job and then just do your franchise on the side. And your franchise can also suffer if that's, how things start out. You have to be really focused on it.
And this
Very good.
differentiates the semi-absentee opportunity from the owner-operator opportunity. Typically something in hair care where you have a retail location can be semi-absentee. Something like Joseph and Edward Jones, that's going to be owner-operator. He's going to be working in the business. He's not going to have a side job. It's because the franchise does suffer when the owner is actually out working another job during the day when you need to be working with your clients. So understand, if you have a semi-absentee operation like a hair salon, it's going to cost you more. You have to have a place for people to go. You have to have employees. It's immediately upfront going to cost you more. Owner-operator is not going to cost as much because you can actually take the salary. You're not paying it out to employees, and you may be able to have an executive office or something, or work out of a vehicle or something like that versus having a physical retail location. And Joseph, I bet you were just going to go right into, that from your perspective.
Brian, you mind if I ask a question really quick?
No, go ahead. We're informal.
So I'm an organizer for a program called 1 Million Cups, and we talk to entrepreneurs all the time here in Colorado Springs and really try to help them grow. And one of the challenges that I see is there's a lot of folks with a lot of gumption and interest and really want to get going, and one of two things happen. They're bootstrapping, and this kind of gets to some social mobility kind of a question in there too. And I'm glad to see the SBA and all the loan guarantees. That really helps. But Jackie, when you're talking 20% down, that's a significant barrier for folks to make a leap. And what I see from a franchise opportunity is what a great place to start, because the system's there. And so many of the entrepreneurs I talk to, they're trying to do it on their own. They're trying to bootstrap the whole thing, but they don't know HR. They don't know payroll. They don't know taxes. They don't know, advertising. And so they jump in with both feet, and they're very excited because they don't see the opportunity in a franchise. Do you see opportunities out there, Cindy or Jackie? How do we help people that are motivated and ready and would be great franchisors, that would be great business owners, to really do it? Because most of what I see is you got to have a pretty significant nest egg, not to just get through the first year, but to get the loan, to do all the other things.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, and I'll go back and say it again, money is important. So if you don't have the financial wherewithal to do this, the answer may be, you can't do this now. But I've actually had, over 12 years, I've had plenty of people who couldn't do it initially, but I planted a seed, and then they'll come back to me later on and their net worth looks different. Maybe they had a retirement account that that it's not in a 401k anymore, or they've got money from some location. So I had a guy who's he got an inheritance. Guess what? He's able to buy a franchise now. But money is so important, and I don't want people to think, oh, this capital world and everybody, money is so important, it's going to keep people out of being business owners, but it will. And the last thing you want to do is to be in business 3 months, potentially be making seeing a return on investment in month 9, but you can't get there. I mean, it's that important. You don't want that. And you may have all the gumption in the world, but gosh, you've got to have the money to back that up. And I just can't emphasize that enough. Jackie, I'm hoping that
I'll
right.
add, I'll add also that, the way, there are different ways to finance it. So if you really have an idea and you really want to do it, you'll figure it out. At the end of the day, that's the bottom line. However, if you're going to a lender and you want them, first of all, a lender is going to be your cheapest source of money. And the reason for that is because we're going to take the least amount of risk. So the way we look at it is, if you are not willing to invest in your business, why should we invest in your business? If you don't have the funds to do that, we're not financing 100% of it. You have to be willing to take some risk. The lender is not going to take all of the risk. And like Cindy, I've had a lot of people come to me and, I explain to them, this is what things need to look like. And they work on it. And most of them come back a year later and they are ready to move forward. But you don't want to, as a lender and as, anybody, you don't want to put somebody in a position to fail. And if they don't have the funds available to start with, that's exactly what you're doing.
And speaking of different ways to fund, I mean, very rarely do I see people coming to buy a franchise to all in the between the franchise fee and all the build out and everything you need to have in place. Very rarely does somebody have $150,000 sitting in a bank account. They are financing through a variety of resources. Loans may be part of it. They may be using an old IRA that's sitting out there somewhere from an old employer, or like an old 401k. I've seen people do that. Home equity, line of credit, stock loans, money sitting in a savings account. It's kind of like MacGyver. Things can kind of get jerry-rigged together. Very rarely are you funding from all one source. It's coming from a variety to form your funding package. That's why it's called a funding package.
Interesting. Actually, I think there's only two more questions here. And the first one is related to what Joseph was talking about, how you need tax help and support, having a support system. So how do you identify, how would a franchisee new to the business identify that support system? Any idea? I mean, does a franchisor tell you that you should talk to this person and this bank and that bank? How does that work?
Joseph, I saw you unmute, so.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about the question, because some of it I think comes from introspection a little bit, of being honest with yourself and knowing what you don't know.
Right.
And you can get internet deep on any topic really fast, but that doesn't mean you're an expert. So I think as you're starting out, you really got to be honest with yourself about, here's what I'm comfortable with, here's what I'm confident about, and here are all the things that I know I don't know, and going out. And what I see at 1 Million Cups, what I see in myself is it's really easy to be cheap to start with and try to think you're going to do it on your own. But at the same time, you're going to make the 10 most common mistakes if you do it that way. And there's a lot of value in going to experts. It might cost you a little bit in the early days, but it's going to save you a lot, at least in my experience, as you go forward, because you don't have to learn those 10 most common mistakes on your own with scar tissue.
I like that. And that's true. I mean, I'm not very good with bookkeeping. I hired a bookkeeper. I certainly don't want to pay corporate taxes and have to figure that out every year. So I have an accountant. I have a business attorney for any questions that might come up. I have a commercial insurance agent that's here local. I have a commercial realtor that I can call and talk to when it's time to go out and take a look for location number 3. So a lot of that's, now I can go to the franchisor and say, hey, what kind of person would I be looking for in an attorney? Or what kind of person might I be looking for in a bookkeeper? And they can say, you want to have somebody who has X, Y, and Z experience, but you can find that in your local market. They don't necessarily have to give you a list of, here's the people you need to talk to. A lot of times it's just about you making local connections in your local market for those professionals. But yeah, I don't like to do bookkeeping. I'm like, I hate it. I'll go through and look at my suspense items once a month. My bookkeeper, she'll send me a little like, knock, knock, time to look at your expenses. And I'm like, I have to force myself to do it. But I'm so grateful, because then I don't have to deal with this in March when I have to file my corporate taxes.
Okay. So would you have done anything differently instead of buying the franchise? That's specifically for you, Cindy, and for you, Joseph.
Differently. I think if I look back now, I don't know, I didn't have a Cindy to go through and say, hey, here's 20 options. And I kind of focused in on, I knew what I didn't want to do, and what I really wanted to do. You know, I didn't want to be an airline pilot and all those kinds of things. And as I was leaving Afghanistan and getting out of the military, and I knew I wanted to help people. So this kind of, I fell into this niche knowing that this is where I wanted to go. But honestly, I didn't do a lot of shopping between the 20 different options that are even in my niche. So I think I might have done a little bit more research. Now I feel extremely lucky that I landed where I did, because the more I kind of peek over the fence, the grass isn't greener over there. So I feel extremely lucky. But I think if I were gonna step back with what I know now, I probably wouldn't have had to peek over the fence to see what else is there to go, okay, I did okay. If I'd have done a little bit more research and broadened my scope earlier with somebody like Cindy, to just know what else is out there, and maybe cover down on some of those questions that popped up later.
So in terms of what I would do differently, you have to think I came in from a unique perspective. I had already had 10 years or 8 years of franchise brokerage experience. So I had exposure to hundreds and hundreds of franchises that were already in my portfolio that I've actually put clients into, or that I thought were interesting. And from a broker's point of view, what makes brokers sort of fun to work with, I think, is because we sit there and go, oh, that's a cool one. Oh, that's a cool one. Oh, that's a cool, I should buy that one. I should buy that one. So it gets you into that mindset anyway. And it puts you in the perspective of your client and say, oh, you know what? You have this tendency. This might be a really good franchise for you. I like it. You're like me. So this is kind of fun. Let's take a look at it. In addition, you know, when I bought my kids' hair salon, I had looked at hundreds of other franchises, but I fell into the kids' hair salon. I bought a resale, by the way, somebody who was getting out. In my first store was a resale. So I bought the resale thinking, and even with my experience, oh gosh, this would be great. And what I've quickly learned is that there is no perfect business. It does not matter. I have employees that work for me. I got 17 employees, and you know what I tell them? This is not the perfect job. If you're looking for the perfect job, you're going to keep looking forever. It's the same with a business. There is not a perfect business. So if I was going to do something differently, I would probably just be a little bit more clear about taking the good with the bad. It's not an all or nothing. It's all and nothing. I mean, you can have them both, but it's not going to be perfect every time. And knowing that, and even when I opened my second location and I opened that from scratch, I learned a ton in that process too. These are all things that I can share with my clients when they go to buy franchises, like what it's like to start one from scratch, what it's like to buy a resale, how they differ, and what to look for. And, you know, second time around, I would ask more questions. I would ask more questions of a seller. But I didn't know that because I'd never done it before. So that's probably my advice on that.
It's classic. I don't know what I don't know. Right. So our time is just about up. Could you take, for people who might have joined us late, could you just take a minute and redo your introduction and maybe give a phone number in case people have questions? Start with you, Cindy.
Sure. Again, my name is Cindy Rayfield. I'm a franchise broker and a franchisee. I help people find and buy franchises. I've been doing that for 12 years. Live right here in Denver, grew up in Colorado Springs. You can find me at cindy@franchisematchmakers.com. My phone number is 720-261-4391. I'm also a franchisee. I own Cookie Cutters Haircuts for Kids in the Denver market. I own 2 locations there. So if you got kids that need haircuts and you happen to be in Denver, you can come see me.
Very good. Thank you, Cindy. Joseph.
All right, yeah, my name is Joseph Locke. I'm an independent financial advisor with Edward Jones. Let me think here. I'm also involved with 1 Million Cups and the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce with Jackie. We're both ambassadors there, so very involved with trying to help people here in the Colorado Springs community. You can reach me at joseph.locke, that's L-O-C-K-E, at edwardjones.com or 719-308-5141.
Very good. Thank you, Joseph. Jackie.
Hi, again, I'm Jackie Gonzalez, and I am a commercial lender with ABC Bank in Colorado Springs. I specialize in SBA lending. So, again, that's typically what is used when somebody is ready to start a business. I also counsel for the Small Business Development Center, which is very similar. Well, not similar to SCORE, but they offer kind of some hand-in-hand services with SCORE. So if you need some additional resources on starting a business, I'd be happy to help. Or if you have questions about financing, I'd be happy to help. I can be reached at jgonzalez, which is GONZALEZ, at theabcbank.com, or at 719-667-8011.
Thank you, Jackie. And once again, I am Brian Neth. I am with SCORE Colorado Springs. We provide free mentoring services. We also have an educational program, which you can take a look at. And the best way to request a mentor or take a look at our offerings is to go to our website, which is coloradosprings.score.org. Once again, coloradosprings.score.org. Now, I want to thank everybody for their time today. I think this was a great exercise and a very informative panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.